The iPhone 15 and 15 Pro are here, and unlike previous years, we have more differences than usual between the four models. So in this video, we're going to discuss not only what's new with all of the new iPhone 15 models, but also point out some important mistakes that you need to look out for, and if you should even consider upgrading from an iPhone 14, 13, or 12. All right, so just like last year, we have four models: the iPhone 15, the 15 Plus, the 15 Pro, and the 15 Pro Max. No Ultra this year. However, unlike last year, we actually have differences between the Pro and Pro Max aside from the display size and the battery size. And before we talk about those differences, let's talk about that display and that battery life. So first off, the display this year between the regular 15 and the 15 Pro is like closer than it ever has been. It's pretty much the same aside from two key areas. So the 15 and 15 Plus have now adopted the dynamic island, and looking at all of the hands-on footage of the iPhone 15, this instantly makes the base model look way more premium than the base model iPhone 14. And this being on the base model and on all iPhones moving forward now, that tells me that Apple and all developers are going to start, making more out of the dynamic island. We're going to start seeing more implementation of the dynamic island in applications, and hopefully all notifications eventually turn into dynamic island animations. That would be pretty awesome. But anyways, going back to that display on the iPhone 15, we have the same 6.1-inch OLED display that we had on the iPhone 14. However, the brightness is now on par with the 15 Pro and the 15 Pro Max at 1000 nits of peak brightness, whereas we only had 800 nits on the regular 14. And then we have 1600 nits of peak brightness in HDR mode versus 1200 on the 14, and then 2000 nits of peak brightness while outdoors. So now the only difference between the 15 and the 15 Pros in terms of the display is going to be that 120 Hz refresh rate and the always on display. That's it. Everything else is the same. However, we do also have slightly thinner bezels on the 15 Pros this year. So it's going to be kind of hard to notice at first, but the bezels were shrunk enough on these 15 Pros to reduce the overall footprint of the phone. So it's now slightly shorter and less wide than the 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max. And then about that battery life. So here's an area where you don't want to make the mistake of just assuming that the Pro models are going to have the best battery life, because that is not necessarily the case. Because just like last year, the sneaky iPhone 15 Plus is going to get better battery life when audio streaming than the 15 Pro Max at 100 hours. So yes, the Pros are going to be better in terms of battery life when streaming video, but this is something to be aware of because battery life really just depends on how you use your device. Not everybody streams video all the time, so the 15 Plus might actually be better for somebody who streams audio a lot more than they watch video. And it's also quite interesting to see that the iPhone 15 has the same battery life as the iPhone 14, despite having an upgraded chipset. So we have the A17 this year, which was in the Pro models last year. Okay, so now let's talk about the build quality and the overall design, because this is another area where you're gonna see some pretty big differences between the 15 and the 15 Pros. So first off, every iPhone 15 is now going to be more rounded off than we saw last year, just slightly rounder edges. And we're also going to have the matte back, the frosted glass back, not just on the Pros, but also on the base 15s as well. So really this year, the base model 15s are gonna look a lot more high-end than we've ever seen before. I mean, we have the dynamic island, we have the frosted glass back. It's gonna be a lot more premium than what we saw last year, in my opinion. However, one area where it's not gonna feel premium is with the overall build quality. And that's because we are still gonna be sticking with an aluminum body for the 15 and the 15 Plus, whereas the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max adopt a new titanium build. So previously Apple used stainless steel on the Pro models. We've had that for years, but now they're switching to titanium. And this in theory should make the phone not only more durable, but it's also going to be lighter. So the iPhone 15 Pro weighs 187 grams, whereas the 14 Pro weighed 206 grams. The 15 Pro Max weighs 221 grams, whereas the 14 Pro Max weighed 240 grams. So this is going to be the lightest Pro model since the iPhone 11 Pro and Pro Max. And by the way, having titanium all the way around the edges means that we don't have to worry about fingerprint smudges getting all over the side of our stainless steel frame on the Pros like I've had to deal with for years now. It's the most annoying part about the frame on the iPhone Pro models previously. Now this year we also have the big change to USB-C. However, USB-C is going to be different on the iPhone 15 compared to the 15 Pro. So the iPhone 15 is going to get USB 2.0 speeds, which is the same as the Lightning port, while the iPhone 15 Pros are going to have USB 3 transfer speeds of up to 10 gigabits a second, as long as you're using the right cable for that. So not quite Thunderbolt. We still don't have Thunderbolt speeds. Maybe we'll get that in the next couple of years, but it's still better than, of course, USB 2.0 like the 15s have. Now, of course, not everybody's going to care about transferring files over, but if you use ProRes, if you shoot in ProRes and if you've dealt with transferring those files, it takes ages, especially when you airdrop it. So transferring, with the cord is going to be the fastest way, and these improved speeds are definitely something that a lot of people are going to appreciate. And also the iPhone 15's USB-C port, so on the base model and the Pro models, you're going to be able to charge your Apple Watch or your AirPods by plugging them in to your iPhone. So if you're in a pinch and you need to charge up your Apple Watch or your AirPods and you only have your iPhone with you have no, ports around, you can just plug it into that iPhone and be able to charge those devices up, which is pretty cool. Okay, so I talked about the transfer speeds with USB-C, and what is the one area where you're really gonna need those fast transfer speeds? Yes, that's for photos and videos, and that's gonna be where we see the big upgrades for the iPhone 15 Pro. I mean, you'll really start to understand why these faster transfer speeds are necessary after you hear these upgrades. So first off, the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max have essentially the same camera system. We have the 48 megapixel main camera, the 12 megapixel ultra wide, and the 12 megapixel telephoto. However, the 15 Pro Max has adopted a new tetraprism camera, and this allows for 5x optical zoom and 25x digital zoom. That's compared to 3x and 15x on the 14 Pro Max, so a big change there. Now, the 15 Pro does not get this capability. It has the same zoom range as the 14 Pro and Pro Max at that same 3x and 15x. And by the way, that telephoto zoom gives you a focal length equivalent of up to 120 millimeters. Now, also both the iPhone 15 Pros get these features, so you get the ability to choose a default focal length, so you can choose between 24 millimeters, 28 millimeters, or 35 millimeters, and this is a setting inside of the settings application. There's now ProRes video recording up to 4K 60 with external recording, so now you can record straight to a hard drive and you don't have to rely on your internal storage of your iPhone, and that is a big benefit for ProRes recording. That's the main reason I never shot in ProRes, is because it would just eat up all my storage. But now that I can shoot straight to an external device is a big benefit. There's also log video recording, Academy color encoding system, and spatial video capture. This one's interesting because you can now take spatial videos on the 15 Pro and relive them on the Apple Vision Pro headset. So essentially, just like we saw in the Apple Vision Pro demo video, you're going to be able to shoot like a video at a kid's birthday party and be able to see all around like 3D, like you're actually living in that moment. So all of those features were Pro and Pro Max exclusives. However, the regular iPhone 15 and 15 Plus is no slouch this year either when it comes to the camera upgrades, because the 15 models, all 15 models, get 24 megapixel high-res photos thanks to the new photonic engine. We have next generation portraits. This is one of my favorite features. So this is an awesome feature that basically allows you to take portrait shots without even needing to enter into portrait mode. So if you forget to go into portrait mode, you can just shoot a regular photo and it's going to detect when you have a subject and a background, and you can essentially make that into a portrait photo later on. We also have Smart HDR5, improved night mode, and then finally, we can now use the full 48 megapixels with the HEIF format. So you are not just limited to RAW anymore. That's not the only way you can shoot in 48 megapixels anymore. You can now actually do that when shooting in HEIF. And this is actually available right now on the 14 Pro and Pro Max as well with iOS 17. So I'm personally excited for these camera upgrades, and I think it's going to be a pretty big upgrade upgrade for a lot of people, especially those who like to zoom in, especially if you're out like in nature and you like to zoom in a lot. The upgraded optical and digital zoom is going to be pretty big. Obviously still lacking behind some of the competitors, but it's a nice improvement in my opinion. Now on the side of the iPhone 15 Pros is something that we've never seen done before in an iPhone, and that is the removal of the mute switch. So yes, the mute switch on the left-hand side has now been replaced with a mute button, but it's not just a button, it can also be remapped as an action button to perform whatever action you choose inside of the settings app. So this will just be a mute button by default, but in settings, you can change this to be a button that performs one of these actions. You can have it set to a certain focus mode, you can have it set to launch the camera app, the flashlight, voice memos, translate, magnifier, shortcuts, or accessibility modes. And my favorite one here already is going to be shortcuts. I can already see this being so useful because with the shortcuts application on the iPhone, you can pretty much launch any application or really do anything you want. So the fact that we could just press that button and then, go into whatever application we want is going to be pretty awesome. However, I have used that on my Apple Watch Ultra and there is a delay, so it makes it kind of useless. So we'll have to wait and see if there's that delay on the 15 Pros as well, like we have in the Apple Watch. And of course, the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus will continue to have that mute switch on the side. Nothing has changed there for those devices. Now, another area you're going to want to understand before you go order your iPhone 15 or 15 Pro is performance. And that's because we have quite a few changes this year as well. So first off, the 15 and 15 Plus have the A16 chip with 6 gigabytes of RAM, whereas the iPhone 15 Pro models have the A17 Pro Chip, which is the first time Apple has ever named a chip Pro, and that's because it's now built on the 3nm process. And then also this chip, these Pro models get 8 gigabytes of RAM, the most RAM ever put in an iPhone. And this A17 Pro chip is pretty impressive, although I was kind of underwhelmed. So let me explain. So we have a 6-core CPU that's 10% faster than last year's model. That was kind of the disappointing part to me, only 10% faster. Feel like it could have been a little bit better given the fact that we have a Pro name for this chip. And then the GPU is a 6-core GPU, which is up from 5 cores, and that is 20% faster. Again, kind of wish that was a little bit faster year over year. And then we have a 16-core neural engine, which is twice as fast. Now that's a nice upgrade there in that neural engine. However, the biggest improvement to the performance with the iPhone 15 Pros is the ray tracing, the hardware accelerated ray tracing. So this is 4 times faster than software-based ray tracing. This is the fastest ray tracing performance in any smartphone. And this means that gaming, in theory, should be incredible on these devices, like night and day better than previous iPhones. Now, of course, I will be testing that here on the channel, so stay tuned. I will be doing a gaming test to see if we can actually tell a real-world difference in gaming. But in theory, this should be pretty awesome for gaming. And plus, to add on to that, there's also Metal FX upscaling, and this combines the performance of the GPU with the neural engine to produce high resolution graphics while using, quote, much less power. So Apple is really emphasizing the fact that this A17 Pro chip is gonna, pump out much better performance, especially with gaming, while having, much less strain on the battery. So that's also pretty promising. But again, we'll have to wait and see. I'm not going to take Apple's word for that. I'm going to have to do those tests myself. We also have Wi-Fi 6E support on the iPhone 15 Pros, whereas we only have Wi-Fi 6 on the iPhone 15s. And then we do also have Thread support on the Pros, whereas there is no Thread support for the regular 15 and 15 Plus. Now, the colors this year are going to be another big reason you may go with the 15 over the 15 Pros. And that's because the 15 Pros are pretty boring, honestly, when it comes to the colorways, which is kind of what a Pro device is supposed to be. It's supposed to be boring, in my opinion. But yeah, the 15s definitely have more fun colors this year. So we have black, green, yellow, pink, and blue. And yes, there's finally a true pink color for the iPhone. And there's also a matching Apple Watch Series 9 in pink to go along with that. And then the boring iPhone 15 Pro colors are going to be black titanium, white titanium, blue titanium and natural titanium. And I personally love the look of that natural titanium. I think it's gonna be the closest to matching my Apple Watch Ultra. So I'm probably gonna stick with that one as my main device, but we'll have to wait and see. Stay tuned for my unboxings. And then as far as the pricing goes, here's an area where we heard that a major price hike was coming. We heard so many rumors about a price hike coming all the way up until the last minute where we finally heard that this may not actually happen. But yeah, spoiler alert, it did not happen because the iPhone 15 stays at $829, the 15 Plus stays at $929, the 15 Pro stays at $999 for a 128 gigabytes. But then when we get to the iPhone 15 Pro Max, we do have a $100 price increase to $1199. However, when you look closer, you'll notice that the base storage option is 256 gigabytes. So technically, it's not really a price increase. Apple's just making us go up a level in storage to 256, which I don't blame them. I think that's the lowest I would ever go nowadays. And then also in the box of all of the iPhone 15s this year will be a braided white USB-C to USB-C cable. So it's nice to see a braided cable coming in the box. So with all that being said, should you upgrade to the iPhone 15 or 15 Pro this year? So if you have an iPhone 14 or 14 Pro, I would say probably skip this year. I would probably wait at least until the iPhone 16 to upgrade because it's really not enough that's compelling to me at least to go from a 14 or 14 Pro up to the 15 or 15 Pro. Now, of course, if you have money to spend and you just get every new iPhone every year, go for it. I can't tell you anything at this stage, but I just don't think that it's worth it. If you are trying to make a good, justifiable purchasing decision, I don't think that you should upgrade from the 14 or 14 Pro. So now what about the iPhone 13 or 13 Pro? If you have one of those devices, should you upgrade to the iPhone 15 or 15 Pro? And I would say that if you care a lot about zoom, like if you really care about zooming in a lot and taking advantage of that new and improved optical and digital zoom, and also if you're a big fan of gaming and you're going to get a lot out of that A17 Pro chip, then I'd say go for it. Otherwise, probably not. I mean, you're still going to have that 120 hertz display if you have the Pro model. You're still going to have, excellent battery life. You're still going to have excellent performance. So I say if you're in the 13 or 13 Pro models, if you're on one of those models, you're kind of a 50-50. It just kind of depends on your situation and of course your financial situation as well. Like if you don't have a lot of money, you're in college or something like that, then don't upgrade, wait a little bit. But if you have some money and you like some of these upgrades, then sure, go for it. But I don't think it's a home run, like you must upgrade if you have the 13 series. Now, if you have an iPhone 12 or 12 Pro, I think the iPhone 15 makes for an excellent upgrade for you guys. So not only are you getting all of the features that we talked about in this video, but you're also getting the 120 hertz display, the better brightness, you're getting the dynamic island, you're getting so many things new aside from just what's new year over year from the 14 to the 15. So you're just getting a lot of bang for your buck, I believe, when you go from a 12 to a 15. So I think that that's really going to be where I kind of draw the line is like, yes, you should definitely upgrade if you have a 12 series or older. Now, I'm not saying that you can't keep living with the 12 or the 11 for multiple more years. Of course you can. I'm just saying, in my opinion, I think that it's worth it to upgrade if you're on the 12 series or older. Now, of course, things can change. I have my iPhone 12 Pro Max over there. I'm going to use that and compare the 12 Pro Max to the 15 Pro Max when I actually get them in my hands. And I'll let you know an update on that, after I've actually used them here in the studio. But that's just my overall first impressions of the iPhone 15 series and, my kind of advice in terms of if you're looking to buy one. And if you've kind of been on the fence, hopefully this helped you out to help you determine if you should actually go ahead and upgrade or not. And like I always say, at the end of the day, it really just comes down to what you value. It's really hard for me to sit here behind the camera and tell you what you should do when you know how you use your phone the best. I'm just kind of laying out the facts and telling you my opinion on things. You may agree with it, you may not. So that's up for you to decide for yourself if you want to order that or not. But I'll be ordering all of them, so I will be bringing you guys a lot more reviews, a lot more coverage on the iPhone 15s. So make sure you are subscribed for those videos. But anyways, guys, I appreciate you watching this video, and I'll see you soon.